Welcome, friend, to this especially sacred part of the Olympian Sanctuary. My name is Varnavas, and I am a ship captain. Don't be fooled by my scarred eye. Though I've seen my share of combat, I mostly stick to trading these days. Well, trading and introducing visitors like you to wonderful sights like this. This place is practically vibrating with divine energy. I feel like if I look over my shoulder right now, Zeus will be staring back at me. The sanctuary of Olympia was dedicated to Zeus, king of the gods. It had close connections to the divine, as you will see very soon. I'll come find you when you're done, and we can talk about what you've learned.
This workshop was built for the renowned sculptor Phidias after his work on the Acropolis of Athens. In 435 BCE, Phidias came to Olympia to begin working on the great chryselephantine statue of Zeus. He died 5 years later, shortly after completing his masterpiece. This grand statue would become one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Phidias's workshop was located right next to the Temple of Zeus. Its structure has been well preserved, mostly owing to its conversion to a church in the 5th century CE. Archaeologists have also discovered lots of ancient materials in the surrounding area, such as casting molds and sculpting tools. The most famous artifact, however, is a cup bearing an inscription that aggressively states, "I belong to Phidias." On the 5th and final day of the Olympic Games, victors attended a ceremony where they were crowned with olive wreaths and showered in flowers. The crowns came from the sacred olive tree of Zeus, which was planted near the god's temple. A young boy trimmed the branches with a golden sickle before giving them to the Hellanodikai to turn into wreaths. After the crowning ceremony, it was time for great feasting and celebration. Pelops was both a legendary Greek hero and the mythical founder of the Olympic Games. According to legend, Pelops fell in love with the beautiful Hippodamia. Her father, Oenomaus, the king of Pisa, disapproved of their union. Having once heard a prophecy that he would be killed by his son-in-law, Oenomaus was known to challenge his daughter's suitors to chariot races, killing them when he won. Still, Pelops was determined to win Hippodamia's heart. Before the race, he enlisted the help of Poseidon, who gave him a golden chariot with 4 winged horses. Pelops was able to win both the race and the hand of his beloved, while Oenomaus was dragged to death by his horses. The start of this famous race was depicted on the eastern pediment of the Temple of Zeus. The Heraion was a temple dedicated to Hera. It is one of the oldest temples in the sanctuary, dating back to approximately 590 BCE. The structure included columns painted with images of women who won the Heraia, an athletic competition made up of running events. Every 4 years, 16 women were chosen to make a veil dedicated to Hera. These women also organized the competition, though they did not compete in it. The Heraia was unique for its focus on female athletes, in contrast to the male-exclusive Olympic Games. Hera was the goddess of women, marriage, family, and childbirth. She ruled Mount Olympus as Queen of the Gods, along with her husband and brother Zeus. Many mythological stories paint her as being annoyed at Zeus's many lovers and illegitimate offspring. In Greek art, Hera is usually depicted as matronly and regal, often wearing a crown or sitting on a throne. She is also sometimes seen holding a pomegranate, a symbol of both fertility and death. Hera's cult was very popular across Greece, and Olympia even minted her image on its coinage. One of the highlights of the Olympic Games was a ceremony that took place on the 3rd day of the festival. It began with a procession of athletes, ambassadors, Hellenodikai, and animals. The group made their way around the Altis until they arrived at the Temple of Zeus. Then the animals were brought in front of the altar of Zeus and offered as a sacrifice. This sacrifice was known as a hecatomb, a word that originally described the sacrifice of 100 oxen. During the hecatomb, the bones and legs of the animals were burned and carried to the top of a mound of ashes from previous sacrifices. Meanwhile, the meat of the animals was saved for a large banquet held later in the evening. The Olympic Games were dedicated to Zeus, and all the ceremonies and events were hosted in his honor. It is no surprise that the largest temple in the sanctuary was the Temple of Zeus. While most temples were restricted to priests, the Temple of Zeus welcomed all who visited Olympia. This openness was most likely meant to show off the gold and ivory statue of Zeus that stood within the temple's walls. The building also featured art depicting both versions of the Olympic festival's founding myth. The eastern pediment showed a scene from the legendary race between Pelops and Oinomaos. The temple's metapiece, meanwhile, showed the 12 labors of Heracles, the other mythical founder of the games. Zeus was the god of sky and thunder, and king of the Olympians. He ruled the world from his home on Mount Olympus. The child of Cronus the Titan, Zeus overthrew his father and cast the Titans out in a great battle known as the Titanomachy. He had children of his own with his wife Hera, including Ares, Hephaestus, Hebe, and Eileithyia. He also had many children without Hera, much to her consternation, but there are too many to list here. Zeus was believed to have control over the lives of mortals, as his many epithets attest to. For example, his title Horkios made him a keeper of oaths, while Xenios was the name conferred to him as a protector of hospitality. In Greek art, Zeus was usually depicted holding a thunderbolt and sitting on a throne, befitting his position as king. The Temple of Zeus was home to the chryselephantine statue of Zeus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The statue, made of gold, ivory, and wood, was sculpted by the renowned artist Phidias. At 13 meters tall, it was as impressive looking as it was difficult to maintain. Oil was used to protect the wood and ivory from cracking and to prevent general decay. While the statue does not exist today, it was thankfully described by Pausanias in great detail, so its legacy lives on.
again! I hope you enjoyed your visit and feel a little bit closer to the gods. Well, as close as a mortal can get. Is there anything else you'd like to do? Farewell for now, my friend. Hail, friend, and welcome to Olympia, home of the Olympic Games. I've often dreamed of competing in the Games. If my sight was better, my legs and arms were stronger, and my coin purse was fatter. But that is not what the gods want, so I continue making the best of the path they've laid out for me. We're standing in the main section of Olympia, where the Olympic Games themselves took place. Over the course of the festival, athletes competed against each other for prestige and glory to honor themselves and their cities. Enjoy your visit, friend. I'll check in when you're done to make sure you've been paying attention.
The first day of the Olympic Festival began with a swearing-in ceremony for the participating athletes, trainers, and judges. The ceremony took place in front of the altar of Zeus Horkios, or Zeus of the Oath. Athletes would swear that they would follow the Olympic rules, while judges promised to be fair and unbiased. Then the competitions began, starting with a contest between heralds and trumpeters over who would have the privilege of announcing the games. The first day's athletic competitions consisted of wrestling, running, and boxing events for the youngest athletes, aged 12 to 18. The second day began with a grand procession into the Hippodrome to celebrate the start of the popular equestrian events. The most anticipated and spectacular of these was the Quadriga, a four-horse chariot race. Horse racing events were unique in that the winner was not the most skilled jockey, but the owner of the fastest horse or chariot. The Spartan princess Caniska once took advantage of this loophole to skirt the rule that women weren't allowed to compete, and earned 2 Olympic victories in the process. The rule also allowed for occasionally strange results, like in 416 BCE, when the statesman Alcibiades entered 7 chariots into a race and won first, second, and fourth place. After the equestrian competitions, the 40,000 spectators migrated to the stadium to watch the pentathlon events. When the day's events were over, funeral rites were performed for the hero Pelops, the mythical founder of the Olympic Games. The night ended with a celebratory feast and a great parade in honor of the day's victors. Victory at the Olympic Games was one of the highest honors a mortal could achieve, and there were several ways to immortalize that honor. Some athletes had statues erected of themselves, while others commissioned poets to write them victory odes. Oral tradition was very important to the Greeks. These odes, called eponychia, were often composed by the finest poets in the land, such as Pindar, Simonides, and Bacchylides. They were usually played at banquets and celebrations attended by the triumphant athlete or upon his departure from Olympia. The pentathlon took place at the stadium on the second day. As its name implies, it was made up of 5 events: discus throwing, javelin throwing, jumping, racing, and wrestling. There are several differences between the ancient version of events and their contemporary counterparts. For example, ancient long jumpers held weights in their hands to give them momentum to launch, since there was no run-up before the jump. Similarly, if an athlete won the first 3 events, they were immediately declared the winner, instead of being judged by their overall performance in all 5 events. Running events work the same as they do today, with the notable exception of all the athletes being nude. As for wrestling, competitors were not divided by weight class as they are today, but instead by age. The winner was the first to throw his opponent to the ground 3 times. Day 3 started with the most important event of the festival. A procession of Hellanodikai, ambassadors, competitors, and animals made their way to the great altar in front of the Temple of Zeus. The animals were then offered as the official sacrifice of the festival. The afternoon of Day 3 was dedicated to foot racing events. Running was the oldest event of the Games, and in fact was the only event at the first Olympics. The main race was called the Stadion, which was a sprint of around 180 meters. The winner was granted the honor of lending his name to the 4-year period between the Games. This period was known as the Olympiad. The 4 years that followed the first Games in 776 BCE were known as the Olympiad of Coroebus of Elis, the first Olympic champion. Once all the competitions were over, a public banquet was held in the Prytaneon to celebrate the day's victors. Day 4 was mainly for combat events. Wrestling matches were held in the morning, followed by boxing and pankration. Pankration was a no-holds-barred mix between wrestling and boxing. Almost all moves were permitted, except for biting, poking the eyes or mouth, and striking the genitals. The event was very popular, and it was seen as the ultimate expression of strength and technique. Later on in the afternoon, there was a unique racing event called the Hoplitodromos, or Race in Armor. In this event, competitors wore a helmet and held a shield to simulate running in the battlefield. The Hellenodikai, or judges of the Greeks, were both the game's adjudicators and their organizers. They hailed from Elis, the city in charge of the sanctuary of Olympia, and new judges were elected each Olympiad. They had several responsibilities. Before the game started, they decided which athletes would be allowed to compete and supervise their training. They also drew lots to make the competition brackets. During the games themselves, they picked the winners and kept an eye out for foul play. For the latter, they were assisted by stick and whip-wielding umpires who stood near the athletes and punished them if they were caught cheating. Victory in Olympia was one of the most prestigious honors in all of Greece. Not only would victors be showered in glory in their home city, but their names would be known across Greece. The temptation to glory led some athletes to break their oath to Zeus and cheat. This could be dangerous, as there were many possible punishments should cheaters be caught. They could be disqualified and fined, or if they were caught cheating during a match, they would be beaten by nearby umpires. The most powerful deterrent of cheating, however, was shame. At the foot of Mount Kronios, and on the way to the stadium, were a group of bronze statues called Zanes, the plural of Zeus. These statues were inscribed with the names of the cheating athletes, how they cheated, and the fine that was imposed. The Zanes, which were funded by cheaters' fines, were strategically placed to be highly visible. Individuals or even entire cities could be found guilty of cheating. The Prytaneion was the administrative center of the cult of Olympia and the Olympic Games. The building housed the sanctuary's priests as well as the game's officials. It was also used to stage the grand banquet held on the evening of the third day to honor victors. It also had a sacred function. Its central chamber was the location of the Fire of Hestia, a sacred flame that burned day and night. This fire was used to light the other altars around the sanctuary This practice may have partially inspired the modern tradition of carrying the Olympic torch.
Hello again! I hope you enjoyed your visit. With their spectacular events and lavish banquets, the Olympic Games were a feast for the senses. I am certain even Zeus himself was entertained by the festivities. Now, is there anything else you'd like to do? Very well. Safe travels, my friend.